Would you like to answer me about why you haven't prosecuted or investigated the Mercury News for lying about Paul Gackle and the victim services? And as you claim to be serving victims, you did not provide Paul Gackle any victim services for 3 years, and then the Mercury lied. Do you want to just turn around and answer that question, Mr. Rosen? I've been asking you for about 5 years.
Thank you very much. As your district attorney, I work hard to pursue justice, to promote reform.
And also you said that your office was responsible for the diversion program, and isn't it true that Harry Dillon objected to the diversion in the great photograph case? Isn't that true, Mr. Rosen? Do you not want to answer any questions during an election year when you have candidates running against you? Your opponents have been willing to speak with me on camera. Is there a reason that you won't? Did you tell Scott Largent to take down the video to support your declaration where you lied? Mr. Rosen, do you have any?
Please step away.
Do you have any comment about the bar complaint against you?
This is Susan Bassi, and if you're a regular watcher to this YouTube channel, you know that a few years ago we met a group of individuals known as cop watchers and First Amendment auditors. These individuals described themselves as activists, and I pointed out they were far more like journalists. And in fact, they are more like journalists than most journalists that I've had the privilege of knowing. They are also editors and publishers, and they do a better job of providing information to the public about the culture of our police and public officials than most major news outlets. News outlets typically endorse certain candidates. In Santa Clara County, the San Jose Mercury has regularly endorsed and supported with favorable reporting the Santa Clara County District Attorney, Jeff Rosen.
Thank you very much. As your district attorney, I work hard to pursue justice, to promote reform, and to enhance public safety.
Admittedly, I didn't understand how a district attorney worked in a county and what they actually did, until Mr. Rosen started prosecuting me for taking this photograph, not in violation of a law, but in violation of a local rule that was made up by judges and lawyers. And I took this photograph on the day that the reporter, Stephen James, was delivering a disqualification on Judge James Towery, who happened to be the former lawyer of District Attorney Jeff Rosen, and he is now a family law judge.
Thank you very much. As your district attorney, I work hard to pursue justice, to promote reform, and to enhance public safety.
Mr. Rosen has prosecuted me for 4 years, over 70 hearings, and assigned 10 prosecutors to me for the public safety threat of taking that photograph. So I thought I would show you what a district attorney really does, because now I've taken diversion on that photograph, not a plea, and I'm able to go to public debates where Mr. Rosen, this round, has 2 candidates against him, which means we get to hear a little bit more about what Mr. Rosen is doing as the duly elected district attorney in Santa Clara County, the heart of Silicon Valley, and the most powerful area in the world.
Dismissed. Integrity means that we honor union contracts. Integrity means that we do not alter timesheets like DA Rosen did to dole out thousands of administrative hours to his supervisors.
Daniel Chung is running against Mr. Rosen. He was recently fired after he wrote an op-ed being critical of Mr. Rosen's office. First Amendment protected activity, but Mr. Rosen has a pattern of retaliating against those who are not loyal to him. He also has a pattern of giving kickbacks in overtime pay and other benefits and bonus to any of his staffers who support his political campaigns.
To his supervisors. Integrity means we uphold and honor conflicts of interest, and we recuse ourselves when there are conflicts of interest. Why do you think DA Rosen is not handling the sheriff corruption trial that the grand jury indicted? It's because he ignored basic conflicts of interest from the very beginning of that investigation. The Attorney General's office even dismissed parts of that case because of a lack of evidence.
During the pandemic, when the courts were closed and Mr. Rosen was drawing a $500,000 a year salary, he charged a number of Santa Clara County Sheriff's deputies, Apple security personnel, and one of his old campaign managers, who happened to be an attorney, with public corruption. It is the only public corruption case that Mr. Rosen has prosecuted, other than some jail guards back in 2015. But Mr. Rosen did such a bad job on this case that the Court of Appeal had to throw it out because he had conflicts of interest and he never should have been prosecuting the case.
That's what integrity means. Integrity means doing the right thing at all times, for the right reasons, in the right way. It means having to make hard decisions. It means speaking truth to power, even if it is the most powerful law enforcement official in Silicon Valley.
Did you tell Scott Largent to take down the video to support your declaration where you lied? Mr. Rosen, do you have any?
Please step away.
2 weeks after I met the cop watchers, Jeff Rosen filed this declaration in a civil harassment case in support of a harassment order against me on behalf of a divorce attorney, Nicole Ford. They were interested in keeping me away from the county buildings, which is a prior restraint on speech, because they didn't much like what I was investigating, which included fraud related to domestic violence and restraining orders, because Miss Ford sits on the Domestic Violence Committee in addition to making money as a private divorce lawyer. Miss Ford was also the attorney for Jeffrey Scott, the husband of the mayor of Los Gatos and the public information officer for the city of San Jose. You can see him in this video, shaking off his wife, shaking down the police, not getting arrested, and very entitled and comfortable in his power. Miss Ford argued that Mr. Scott was not a threat to the public, but she also argued that my looking at her in a public meeting caused her such harm that she needed to restrain me from these public meetings so that I couldn't report on what she and others were doing in the county government.
You know how I know he doesn't care about mental health? Because he stigmatizes it and weaponizes it. At an earlier interview a few weeks ago, when I criticized his policies, what he said to me, instead of answering the criticisms, the substantive criticisms, was just saying, "Daniel, I feel sorry for you, you should go get help." He stigmatizes mental health. He weaponizes it. He likes to put his employees on wanted posters in order to terrorize his employees.
Here, Mr. Chung is talking about a BOLO, or a wanted poster, that Mr. Rosen put him on, one of his own employees, shortly after he wrote an article critical of Mr. Rosen's office. And in writing that article, Mr. Chung was afforded the First Amendment right of free speech. Mr. Rosen and his retaliation claim resulted in a federal lawsuit against Mr. Rosen after he fired Mr. Chung for speaking up.
And when I'm elected DA, I'm going to be fighting for you no matter what. Whether you're on the left, the right, the middle, I care about you. I care about you. I have lived experiences. I've gone through my own trauma. I've been a career prosecutor. I've interned at public defenders' offices. I know how to zealously prosecute and do it with integrity, with competence, and compassion, right? What you want in a prosecutor is someone who has the ability to prosecute cases. Sajid can't say that a rapist belongs in prison. He can't say those words. Jeff can't own up to the lack of integrity in his office. I own up to things. I admit my mistakes. I admit my flaws. And I'm willing to be vulnerable with the public and transparent with the public, right? The public wants to believe that prosecutors are always doing the right thing for the right reasons in the right way. You also have to care about justice for victims. We need balance in our system, right? Defendants and victims deserve justice.
Thank you very much. As your district attorney, I work hard to pursue justice, to promote reform, and to enhance public safety.
And after 10 years of being the district attorney, during a debate where he had the first opponents for the first time, all Mr. Rosen could talk about was the same old tired subjects: how he convicted Brock Turner, how he had passed a law, and how he had prosecuted police back in 2015. What Mr. Rosen didn't talk about were all the crime victims that he failed. Paul Gackle, who was stabbed 14 times and then fired by the San Jose Mercury, who then tried to interfere with his benefits. There were countless victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and there were many more victims of white-collar crimes, of hacking and privacy concerns, because we sit in the center of Silicon Valley, and Mr. Rosen wants you to believe that public safety involves only the crimes that happen down at the local liquor store.
Both in New York City and in Silicon Valley, sometimes people have talked about how I am the most confrontational with the police officers and actually hold them to account. In fact, I used to have an office mate in New York City who came to my office and asked, Daniel, are you going to be okay? Because you seem to be having a very heated conversation with a police officer. I hold them to account. I make sure that they're doing their investigations ethically, and if we cannot prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, I push back. This DA hides the Brady list from his own prosecutors. That Brady list shows police misconduct. All of the prosecutors in the office need to have direct access to that Brady list so that when we see officers who are problematic, who have credibility issues, who have misconduct in their past, we don't take those cases to trial. We look at them very carefully and we figure out what's really going on with those cases.
And of course, it was San Jose police officer Jonathan Silva who beat a man in the San Jose State Library and then went to work for the Los Gatos Police Department that was exposed by SB 1421 police record laws that allowed reporters to get information on bad cops. And that brought the First Amendment auditors to Los Gatos when we started to work together to cover the police, the DAs, and public officials. And last night, I covered the first in-person debate for the Santa Clara County District Attorney's race. In that debate was Sajid Khan, the incumbent District Attorney Jeff Rosen, and Daniel Chung, who formerly worked in the DA's office. And when the candidates finished, Mr. Chung reached up and tried to shake Mr. Rosen's hand. And I fortunately caught Mr. Rosen snubbing Mr. Chung in a photograph. But what I missed was the next shot, and that's where it appeared Mr. Rosen sought to trip Mr. Chung. Mr. Chung was clearly rattled by it, and there was another cameraman present, so I'm going to let you decide what happened. Our democracy will always be better off if the cop watchers and First Amendment auditors can join with journalists to hold police and public officials accountable. Because when we can reach the greatest number of people to provide information about an incident, we all win, and we all are able to see and understand what's going on with our tax dollars and the culture of our law enforcement and our DA's offices.
Because prosecutors can't be investigating their fellow prosecutors. There absolutely has to be an honoring of conflicts of interest. And I know this because I've been through processes with DA Rosen where he has destroyed evidence, where he lies directly in both verbal and written means. And so when we have issues of honesty or dishonesty in the office, we need other parties to step in and make sure that we are being held accountable. And if we want to have a system like that, when we prosecute cases, we need to uphold the highest standards of integrity. When you have a saying in the office, like, if you're not one of Rosen's chosen, you're going to be frozen. How is that integrity? That is the highest levels of cronyism and corruption in the office. If you have a culture built on loyalty to the man rather than loyalty to the law, you're going to have a breakdown of integrity. Even the very definitions that DA Rosen offered tonight, the soundness and the wellness of that office.
The snub of a handshake at a political debate may not be enough to not vote for a candidate, but Jeff Rosen has been in office for over a decade, and if he can't treat his opponents in a political debate for the first time that he has them with respect, then we should wonder how Mr. Rosen is going to treat criminal defendants and crime victims that he is paid to protect.